Hey everybody, what's going on? In this video I'm going to be talking about what I learned from a course that I took with Dave Jacke about coppice agroforestry, coppicing, pollarding. There's not a lot of hard and fast rules because the species of trees really depends on, how you manage the coppice and pollarding depends on the species and trees. But for those unaware, quick overview. This one's getting a little old, but if you were to coppice this plum tree, for example, you would basically cut it very low to the ground, and it would resprout. And I'll show you kind of what that looks like. This was an accidental coppice that I did when I was trying to remove the tree, but it survived. So I cut it, and then new sprouts off the base, and you're getting all this new green growth. And the idea is that you would do something like this if you don't necessarily want one big tree. You want lots of small diameter wood that you can use for firewood or for crafts. There's a lot of different uses for the resprouts of coppicing. And so it's generally done in the dormant season, and you're gonna go ahead and make the cut in the dormant season, and in the springtime you'll get all these new shoots. And the same age tree without being cut looks like this. And then if you were going to pollard, you would do it a little bit higher. You would do it here, or you do it even higher, or you could make the cut here, and new shoots would shoot out from where you made the cut, and then you could manage that at a higher level with new regrowth. So pollarding is when the regrowth is happening not at the base, and coppicing is when it's happening at the base. And there's benefits and drawbacks to each approach. If you wanted to use this technique for feeding animals, for tree fodder, I don't know if prunus is probably not the best example, but if you were going to do that, you would want a pollard so that the animals can't have access whenever they want to from the new regrowth, because they would just consume it dry or consume it ad nauseum, and then it would kill the tree. But this way, if you did it much higher, if you made the cut here, and then you had all this new regrowth shooting off that branch, you could then chop down a branch and it would fall to the animals below. And you could do that once a year, maybe 2 times in the year. You should probably let it rest for a few years. That's one thing I learned, that you want to leave it at least 2 years, or maybe even 3 to 5 years between cutting it down to feed the animals. But the other option is just to cut down a few branches every year to feed the animals tree fodder. The regrowth usually comes back much straighter than something like this. This branch is a little wavy, a little curvy, but if I were to coppice it and harvest the branches like you saw over there, it would be a lot more straight and even uniform branches that could be used and sold for various purposes. There's different types of growth. At the end of the tip of this is not really a growing shoot because we're getting to the end of the season. See if I can find one. The tips, plants are going to be either fixed growth or continuous growth. Fixed growth means it has, maybe a certain amount of nodes, maybe 8 nodes that it shoots out from the bud in the early season, and it shoots out until it reaches a certain length, and then it stops growing and sends all of the sugars from the leaves back to the roots. And that's a good thing. You want fixed growth, which is associated with a ring porous type wood structure. You want that because especially for tree fodder, so that after it's fixed, it's gone to its fixed growth, and then it starts to send the sugars back, the tree has carbohydrates in its reserve, so then you can make the cut and you're not starving the tree. In the continuous growth, it's going to just continue growing. It doesn't really stop until the end of the season, so it's not going to have as much carbohydrate stores in its roots until it goes dormant. So you're going to have to make those cuts when it's dormant so that you're not stealing too much of the carbohydrate from the tree. So there's a lot of complexities that Dave's going to talk about in his book, but that's kind of the basics. You could work with a lot of different species, even some conifers. But we have not mulberry, hazelnut right here, just a multi-stem shrub, and that can be managed with coppicing. You could harvest those straight stems for a variety of purposes, even hedges. And then it will regrow, and you have rotations, so you might harvest the wood 1 year and then you don't come back until 5 years, 10 years. Or you have other rotations that are very short that you could plant very close together and harvest every single year. A certain species, perhaps like willow. But for longer rotations, say a couple years, up to 10 years maybe, it would be 4 to 6 feet, or 6, maybe even 6 to 8 actually, which might be a better spacing. And then for longer rotations over 10 years, you could go even further spacing, like 11, or really as wide as you want to take it, as wide as makes sense. All right, so that's just my primer to coppicing and pollarding. It's a really interesting way to manage woodlots so that you aren't killing the trees when you harvest the wood. You can kind of do it continuously. It's a way to feed animals with really diverse, healthy forage. One more example here. It's not really coppicing and pollarding, but I'm training this mulberry to grow laterally. And actually, I will be pollarding right here. And then when it regrows, it will regrow vertically. I'll have all this nice green mulberry leaves, and I grow these for my own consumption. So that's just one other example. All right, thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions.